She was scripted. No answers. No answers were given. It's a cover-up, total cover-up. It's obvious. The fact that everyone from GM is still there, to me, is amazing.
That was Renee Trautwein, whose daughter Sarah was killed in an accident involving her Chevrolet Cobalt in 2009. It said GM CEO Mary Barra's answers yesterday weren't good enough. And as we mentioned, many family members are in D.C. for these hearings.
It's got his ashes in it. My daughter had it done for me. I wear it every day. When I close my eyes, I see my son's face and imagine the worst, what he had to go through. That's all I can see.
Why wasn't this done sooner? This is now 6 years. You know, why didn't they say this sooner? Why didn't they get a hold of anyone? Why aren't they doing anything now? We see the cars, same cars on the road every day. Every day.
Barra announced that GM has hired Ken Feinberg, who of course handled compensation for 9/11 victims, as well as the payouts after the BP oil spill and the Boston bombing, to look at what steps it should take. But GM has not yet committed to the idea of establishing a compensation fund, saying they will announce their decision in 30 to 60 days. But obviously the hiring of Feinberg hints where they're headed. Also returning to the hot seat today is David Friedman. He's the acting administrator of the nation's top auto safety regulator, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. Some lawmakers are asking why the agency declined to investigate after reports that the airbags in the Cobalt failed to deploy in a series of these accidents.
NHTSA panel decided there was not a trend here and decided not to investigate, despite the number of complaints, the fatal crashes, and the warranty claims.
The Cobalt did not stand out. It was a little bit above average, but there were several vehicles that were significantly higher. There were some vehicles.
I understand, but twice employees of NHTSA raised a red flag on this. It wasn't just once.
In 2006, 18-year-old Natasha Weigel and her friend, Amy Radermaker, 15, were killed when the ignition switch in the 2005 Chevy Cobalt that their friend was driving abruptly turned off. The car lost power steering and braking, the airbags could not deploy, and the Cobalt slammed into a telephone pole, box, and 2 trees. Doug Weigel, Natasha's father, is a plaintiff in a lawsuit against GM, and Robert Hilliard is his attorney. Mr. Weigel, Mr. Hilliard, thanks for coming on. Mr. Weigel, I want to start with you. What did you think of Ms. Barra yesterday?
Very scripted. I don't think she answered any of the questions that the senators had for her, or the House representatives. Either she doesn't understand a lot of their questions, but it was very, very scripted.
Did you feel like Congress was asking the right questions?
I think they did. I think they asked very straightforward questions with what I thought required simple answers.
And what do you want to hear today, the senators, what you didn't hear yesterday from her, what are you hoping the senators do today in today's hearing?
Well, I think they're asking a lot of similar questions, and some of them have different, but I'm afraid they're going to get the same answer, that it's going to be in their investigation, and she wants the same answers. But a CEO of a company like that should be able to go anywhere in her company and get the answers that she needs, and not page through a book that was given to her and not have answers.
Mr. Hilliard, when you heard her say that she didn't know about this until essentially the day she got the keys to GM in January of 2014, that was just... what did that tell you? To me, it sort of screamed, wow, this was kept in such a closed circle. If that's taking her at her word, they were trying to make sure a lot of people didn't know inside of GM. That's the definition of cover-up.
Yes, it is, and I'm not sure I believe her. You know, I've tried cases for 30 years, and I know that a jury would have looked at that and said, oh, really? You've been in a management position for 30 years, and this is something that you had no information about? I sent her an email 2 weeks ago saying you have 2 million vehicles on the road right now with this defect, and you need to take them off the road. You know, I hope what the Senate does today is they show her own recall letter where it says, the recall letter sent to the clients, to the customers, where it says, if you lighten up your keychain, doesn't matter. You hit a rough patch of road or a pothole, this could still happen.
Look, I have a niece who drives a Cobalt. I mean, this is an affordable car that parents get their kids as a first or second car. I mean, this is what makes this. These cars shouldn't be. You believe these cars shouldn't be on the road at all right now?
Absolutely not.
Going back at all. Tell me about your meeting with her on Sunday. How was that?
At the evening meeting?
Yes, with Ms. Barra.
Again, I think it was very scripted. She went around the room and said her condolences to each and every person, shook their hand with her.
Was it polite in there? It had to be. I mean, that had to be. I can't imagine.
It started out as polite,
Yeah.
but you can only hear "you're sorry" so many times. And I think maybe halfway through the room, after an hour and a half, the parents started saying it. You know, sorry's not good enough. Sorry is not. And I feel the same way. Sorry, you can only hear it so many times, and it's just redundant. It doesn't mean anything. You know, there needs to be action. And as she said, with the new GM and the old GM, no one's been fired. No one's been held accountable for any of that. So I don't know if there is a new GM. I don't think there is.
Now you're putting together, Mr. Hilliard, a lawsuit. You represent all the families here that have been here in Washington. And your lawsuit's at GM. There have been some questions about how NHTSA's handled this. Are the questions in your mind, and are the questions enough that you would direct a lawsuit at the government?
No. In my view, and this is true with the Pinto exploding gas tank cases with Firestone, is NHTSA is basically a chihuahua guarding a dragon. You know, they don't have the manpower, they don't have the money, and if a international car manufacturer decides they want to challenge NHTSA on a regulation or a fine, they simply throw lawyers and money at it for years at a time.
So you think NHTSA's undermanned, they don't have the power that they need? You think they need to be more embedded with the car companies?
You got to give them teeth. You know, if you want to blame NHTSA, then you give NHTSA the weapons to go after the car company. You don't blame them afterwards when they never had the weapons.
Mr. Weigel, tell me about Natasha.
She's a pretty free-spirited kid. She played hockey since she was 8 years old, and just a lot of energy, and I don't know. She's a pretty free spirit, and it's just, for me and then all of the families, you know, all these kids in these accidents, mostly young kids. Everything
was ahead of them. She'd be what, 24 today, 25?
Close. It's cut short, you know, and this is tearing her mother apart. That was her only daughter, and many other families that was their only child. So there needs to be responsibility somewhere. It's there. I hope Congress finds it.
Well, I appreciate you sharing your story here. Hopefully you can get some satisfaction today.
Thank you.
And watching this hearing with GM, Mr. Hilliard, Mr. Weigel. Thanks for coming on.